Wait, did the WNBA media really just say Caitlin Clark isn't the best point guard in the league? Fans are furious, and honestly, they have every right to be. How can someone put out a statement like this when the numbers tell a completely different story? Caitlin Clark has already proven she's one of the most electrifying players in the league. She's breaking records, making jaw-dropping passes, and leading her team like a true floor general. But according to some, she's still not the best? So where is this claim coming from? And does it actually hold up? Well, let's break it all down. So here we go again. Another day, another WNBA media figure making a wild claim about Caitlin Clark. This time, it's Natalie Esquire. And she's stirring up controversy by declaring that Chelsea Gray, not Caitlin Clark, is the best point guard in the WNBA. Now listen, nobody is denying that Chelsea Gray is a great player. She's a veteran, a champion, and has had some incredible moments in her career. But when you start saying that she's better than Caitlin Clark right now, that's where fans have a problem. Because here's the thing, statistically, that just doesn't make sense. The numbers don't support it. The impact on the game doesn't support it. And honestly, even the eye test doesn't support it. So what exactly is this claim based on? So according to this post that she put up on social media, Natalie Esquire says, Chelsea Gray is the best point guard in the WNBA. That hasn't changed because she has a down year returning from injury. The disrespect on her name was ridiculous. And now before we dive into the stats and break this all down, let's take a step back and look at why this argument is even happening in the first place. Caitlin Clark has been under fire since day one. Ever since she entered the WNBA, there have been certain people in the media who seem determined to discredit her in any way they can, whether it's downplaying her stats, nitpicking her game, or outright ignoring her impact. It's been a pattern. And it's frustrating, because Clark isn't just another rookie trying to find her footing. She's already one of the best players in the league. That's not an opinion. That's a fact backed up by numbers, performances, and influence. Let's talk about that influence for a second, because this is something that a lot of people are conveniently ignoring. Caitlin Clark isn't just playing well, she's changing the entire WNBA. Viewership is up, ticket sales are up, her jersey sales are through the roof. Fans are coming out in record numbers just to see her play. She's bringing mainstream attention to the league like no player before her. And yet, instead of celebrating this, certain people seem to be going out of their way to push alternative narratives. This whole Chelsea Gray situation is just the latest example of that. So I am assuming that Natalie Esquire posted this because a lot of people were questioning Chelsea Gray because she was coming back from an injury that made her very slow, and it did hurt her game a lot. But when you post something like this, it makes a lot of people go in and just go into receipts because this is quite a provable untruth. So let's get into the numbers. Caitlin Clark in her first professional season put up an insane stat line. She averaged 19.2 points, 8.4 assists, and 5.7 rebounds per game. That's not just good for a rookie. That's elite for any point guard in the league. Those are numbers that scream superstar. Now let's look at Chelsea Gray. Last season, Gray averaged 8.6 points, 4.9 assists, and 2.9 rebounds per game. Those are solid numbers, but let's be real. They're not even close to what Clark is doing. Even if we go back to Gray's best season, where she averaged 15.3 points and 7.3 assists, it still doesn't match up with what Clark is doing in her first year. And that's where the argument just falls apart. Because if we're talking about who is the best point guard right now, then the answer has to be Caitlin Clark. The stats prove it. The performances prove it. The impact on the game proves it. But let's be fair here. Numbers aren't everything. Maybe some people are arguing that Gray is a better leader or has more championship experience. And yes, experience is valuable. Winning a championship is impressive. But at the end of the day, this debate isn't about who had the better career. It's about who is the best point guard in the league right now. And right now, That's Caitlin Clark. Now, if this was just one person's opinion, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem is that this kind of misinformation spreads. When a WNBA media member makes a claim like this, people believe it. They take it at face value. They don't all go and check the stats for themselves. And that's what makes this so frustrating. Because instead of giving people real analysis, we're seeing a clear bias at play. And this isn't the first time that Esquire has gone after Caitlin Clark. Just a few months ago, she was one of the people accusing Clark of stat padding when she was chasing an assist record. Think about that for a second. Stat padding? For trying to set an assist record? Since when is being unselfish and creating opportunities for your teammates considered stat padding? It was a ridiculous claim then. And it's just as ridiculous now. But this is what keeps happening. Whenever Clark does something impressive, there's always a segment of people who try to twist the narrative. When she drops 30 points, they say she's just a shooter. When she racks up 10+ assists, they say she's chasing stats. When she brings in record-breaking viewership, they say it's just hype. It's never enough for some people. And look, nobody is saying Caitlin Clark is a perfect player. She's still growing. She has areas to improve, just like every young player does. But to act like she's not already one of the best in the game is just delusional. Let's talk about how her game actually impacts winning. One of the most important qualities in a great point guard is how they elevate the team around them. And Clark does this better than anyone. She makes every single player on the court better. Her passing ability is next level. She sees plays develop before they happen. She knows how to put her teammates in the best position to score. That's why her assist numbers are so high. It's not just because she has the ball in her hands. It's because she knows exactly what to do with it. She also stretches defenses like no other player in the league. Because of her deep shooting range, defenders have to guard her far beyond the three-point line. That opens up driving lanes, forces mismatches, and makes her team's offense much more dangerous. And let's not forget her competitiveness. Clark is one of the most relentless players in the WNBA. She's not just out there to play, she's out there to win. That's what makes this whole argument so frustrating. Because when you look at everything she brings to the table, it's obvious that she's the best point guard in the league. So why are some people so determined to argue otherwise? It honestly feels like some people just don't want to give Clark the credit she deserves. Maybe it's because she's new. Maybe it's because she's shaking up the league. Maybe it's because they don't like the attention she's bringing to the WNBA. Whatever the reason, it's wild. Because the reality is, Clark is exactly what the WNBA needs. She's a game changer. She's bringing millions of new fans to the sport. She's making headlines for all the right reasons. And yet, instead of celebrating that, we're seeing people try to tear her down. It's the same pattern over and over again. Whenever a young player starts dominating, there are always people who resist it. They try to hold on to the old guard instead of embracing the new era. But guess what? The new era is here. And Caitlin Clark is leading it. No amount of biased takes or misleading narratives is going to change that. Because at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. The impact doesn't lie. The game itself doesn't lie. Caitlin Clark isn't just the best point guard in the WNBA right now. She's on her way to being one of the best of all time. And whether people want to admit it or not, that's the reality. Let's be real for a second. Caitlin Clark is doing things that we don't see often, especially not from a player this early in their WNBA career. Yet, here we are, still debating whether she deserves the title of the best point guard in the league. If you're just tuning into this conversation, you might be asking yourself, why is this even a debate? Because quite frankly, it shouldn't be. We're witnessing something special with Clark, something that is shifting the entire landscape of women's basketball, and instead of embracing it, some people are fighting it every step of the way. It's as if they can't accept that a rookie, someone fresh out of college, could already be outplaying veteran point guards. But that's exactly what's happening. Caitlin Clark isn't just playing well, she's elevating the standard. And that's exactly why certain media members and analysts are having such a hard time giving her credit. There's an unspoken rule in sports. Rookies are supposed to struggle. They're supposed to go through growing pains, take their lumps, and slowly work their way up to elite status. But Clark didn't follow that script. Instead, she walked into the league and immediately started putting up numbers that rival some of the best players in WNBA history. She wasn't just adjusting to the pro game, she was excelling in it. And that's where the resistance comes in, because for some, it's easier to downplay her success than to admit that she's already at an elite level. Let's take a deeper look at why this conversation is even happening. The media plays a massive role in shaping narratives around players, and the WNBA is no exception. Certain voices in the media have influence, and when they put out statements like Chelsea Gray is still the best point guard in the WNBA, people who don't follow the stats closely take it as fact. But this is where things get frustrating, because when you actually dig into the numbers, you start to see just how misleading that statement is. We already compared Clark's and Gray's stats, but what we haven't talked about yet is the context behind those numbers. Caitlin Clark isn't playing for a stacked championship-level team like Chelsea Gray has been. She's not surrounded by an all-star roster with elite talent at every position. She's playing for a young Indiana Fever team that is still trying to find its identity, and despite that, she's still putting up better numbers than Gray. Think about how ridiculous that is. Most rookies need time to adjust to the pace and physicality of the WNBA, but Clark didn't just step into a starting role. She stepped into a leadership role. From day one, she was expected to be the primary scorer, playmaker, and leader for an entire franchise. That's not an easy task, yet she's thriving in that role. Now, let's talk about impact on winning, because this is another area where Clark is already proving herself. Yes, the Indiana Fever didn't come out and dominate the league in her rookie season. Nobody expected them to. But what we are seeing is a team that is steadily improving, a team that is building something special around Clark. And make no mistake, she is the reason for that progress. The Fever's offense revolves around her. She dictates the tempo, creates for her teammates, and forces defenses to completely change the way they play against Indiana. That's what elite point guards do. Let's put it in perspective. When we talk about the best point guards in NBA history, what do they all have in common? They elevate the players around them. They make their teammates better. They control the game, not just with scoring, but with their passing, their leadership, and their ability to impact every possession. That's exactly what Clark is doing. But instead of recognizing that, we're still hearing people try to discredit her. And that's what's driving fans crazy. Because this isn't just about who's the best right now. It's about acknowledging reality. And the reality is that Caitlin Clark is already outplaying most of the league. She's setting records. She's putting up elite numbers. She's leading a franchise. And she's doing all of this while still developing as a player. So if she's already this good now, just imagine what she'll look like in a few years. And that's what scares people. Because it's one thing to be a great rookie. It's another thing to be a generational talent. That's what Clark is. She's not just having a good season. She's setting the foundation for a career that could go down as one of the best in WNBA history. And that's why this media bias is so frustrating. Because instead of recognizing that, some people are clinging to outdated narratives. It's almost as if they don't want her to succeed. But here's the thing about great players. They don't need validation from the media. Clark doesn't need someone like Natalie Esquire to call her the best point guard in the league. Because the truth is, her play speaks for itself. She's proving it every single night on the court. And that's why, no matter how hard people try to deny it, she's going to keep breaking records, keep leading her team, and keep forcing people to acknowledge what they've been avoiding. Because at some point, even the biggest critics won't be able to ignore the undeniable truth. Caitlin Clark isn't just the best point guard in the WNBA right now. She's on her way to becoming one of the best to ever do it. So what do you think? Is this just another case of bias against Caitlin Clark? Or do you think Chelsea Gray still deserves that top spot? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on Caitlin Clark, the WNBA, and all things basketball. Because one thing is for sure, this debate isn't going anywhere. And with Clark just getting started, the WNBA is in for a wild ride.